Ark Survival Ascended Beyond Ascension Part 2. At the beginning of this journey, we built a house, we lost a friend, we crafted a raft, and we made a new friend.
Oh, and we killed a whole lot of dodos. And now, you're all caught up. I had left behind the place we once called home, and the grave for friend, to end up in South Zone 2. Now you may be wondering why South Zone 2. Well, I had the intention to power level here as there was quite a few explorer notes, and also there was crystal nearby in the cave that's just on the other side of South Zone 2. There's plenty of low-level creatures to go through and harvest for plenty of hide, and there's also the river nearby in the coastal region which contains the river metal rocks, which will allow me to get a couple of early game tools and help set me up for success. And I was about to head out, but then I saw this majestic view. This game really does look nice, as long as you're not doing too much at once. Now the next big thing that I wanted to be able to go through and craft was a forge, and hide was not an issue as the entire population of wildlife had actually all offered up their bodies for this specific purpose, but I was still quite a bit short on stone, so I needed to get to work. Now at this point, I actually had all the materials I needed to be able to go through and craft the forge. However, I still saw that there was dodos everywhere, and this population really needed to be put under control. So I killed the last few remaining dodos on this beach, and then I headed back over to the raft and placed my hard-earned forge. Then, once I started reorganizing my raft, I actually had lost my narcotics, or I thought I had, so I spent the next 10 minutes trying to locate where I had placed the narcotics I had crafted earlier. It wasn't until I went back and actually watched this video that I realized I had actually crafted them all into tranq arrows and they were in my inventory the entire time. I had thought I had lost them. And once I had given up on looking for the narcotics, I realized it was time to set sail, so I lit the flame in the forge and the campfire, and I traveled to the lagoon portion of South Zone 2. However, instead of continuing to the middle like I had originally intended, I had saw a Bronto, and so I wanted to scope out the back area of the South Zone 2 area just to ensure that it was safe and that it lacked any form of Sarco. Once I knew the area was clear, then I went through and I proceeded with my original intended destination. However, on my way over, I was reminded as to why the waters of the Ark were treacherous. I had a giant jump scare from a Scyphactony. And I wanted to get the heck out of there ASAP, because that was not going to happen. There is no way I would die and Finny would die. So we went on our way, and we had finally arrived at our destination. Now when I landed, much to my surprise, I was greeted with a moss chops. Now this was going to determine whether Ark was going to play nice with me on this playthrough, or whether it intended for me to do things the hard way. So I walked on up to see what it is that he wanted to eat, and it was giant bee honey. So we were not going to tame this guy, and we certainly weren't going to kill it because they're a pain to kill because they got far too much health. So I just pretended he didn't exist, and I went on my way. I then hopped on Finny and worked my way back towards the back of South Zone 2, and now that it was a bit more light outside, I was actually going to be taking a swim. I was going to be looking for the river rocks that contain the metal, hoping that I'd get enough just to be able to make the smithy and the metal pick, because I was going to need that to be able to go through and harvest the crystal in the cave that I plan to go on into later. But then, during the process of mining these underwater rocks, with the HUD turned off, trying to go for a more cinematic feel, I had forgot to watch my oxygen meter, so I had nearly drowned to death. And so when I did finally manage to make it out of the water, I decided that was enough, as I actually had 12 pieces, which was going to be able to craft 6 total ingots, which would be exactly enough to be able to make enough for the smithy and the pick. So I worked my way back on over to the raft. Things were really looking up. We had had a great start so far, and everything was getting situated, but then we were attacked. Finny got attacked by another one of those darn seagulls. I don't know what it is, but they do not like him. Or her. I don't really know. I never cared to ask. Anyways, we killed the seagull because he attacked our buddy, and we were not going to be having any more friends die if we could help it. And finally, we had crafted up the smithy and made ourselves a metal pick, and we were doing pretty good. And because we had the metal pick, that meant that we immediately threw away the stone pick, as we never wanted to have to use that and resort to these low-level tactics again. I also wanted to power level, so I worked my way over, and there was actually 3 explorer notes that I can grab back to back to back to be able to get a huge boost in power here. And then we're actually going to craft some items while we have these nodes to gain a whole bunch of experience. That way we can unlock a bunch of new engrams and boost our stats up by quite a bit prior to making that journey. So I started off and worked my way towards the back of the little enclosure here in South Zone 2 and picked up the first note. And then just immediately around the corner is actually the second note. They're literally within like 5 feet of each other. And I unlocked both the notes on both me and Finny, because the more levels he has, the more health he has, the less likely he is to die. And we don't need any more friend tragedies. And for me, I continued to go through and work my way over towards the third note, which was actually the scariest of the 3 because it is near the jungle and there is a possibility of some dangerous spawns in there. Fortunately, though, we were not caught off guard, grabbed the note, and walked out without any issues. So we headed on back to the raft and got ready to do a whole bunch of work. Alright, and now that we have all those explorer note buffs, it was time to power level. Now here is a tip from Wretch Stark, somebody who commented on one of my community polls a while back here. And essentially, if you have the DLC, it actually is the absolute best way to level up, especially in the early mid-game. Because at level 21, you actually unlock the Painting Canvas, and it actually only costs 8 fiber to build, and it gives you a buttload of experience. They are quite heavy, so you do basically need to stand still or be mounted onto a creature while you do this. But essentially, I had those buffs, and I went through and I crafted as many as I could. I had a couple hundred fiber, I think like 500. And, well, look at how many levels I gained. And then after power leveling, I spent a good couple of minutes going through and basically unlocking all the essential engrams that I thought that I would either need now or sometime in the near future. The only thing that I did not invest a lot of points into was the settles, as I was not quite sure what I was going to tame yet. But I was not the only one that took a big inhale of that super juicy experience buff. Nope, Finny got some too, so I proceeded to go through and I basically destroyed every single bush and tree within an area until he literally weighed so much that he could not take another step. Now, the very next thought on my mind was making my way over to this cave to be able to get the crystal, but I was worried about the journey. I was not sure if we'd encounter raptors or a ceratosaurus, so I wanted to be extra prepared. So I went through and gathered a bunch of fiber so I could go through and craft up a full set of hide gear. And now that I had gotten pretty jacked off of all that experience, and Finny was now super Finny, ready to take on anything that the game could throw at him, we decided to go through and float across to the next little beach here, which is what's going to lead us to the cave. Now, I was not sure how this was going to end up, so I wasn't sure whether I should take Finny or to leave him. But before I could make a decision, I saw the craziest thing. Not just another moss chops, but a baby moss chops. And I will be perfectly honest with you, the moment that I saw he needed raw prime fish meat, well, I decided we were going to kill this guy and we were going to take his babies. When I woke up this morning, I did not see fatherhood as being a part of my journey today. But because this Moss Chops wanted to be stubborn and only eats exquisite foods like raw prime fish meat, we chopped him up in front of his baby and basically told the baby, I'm your new daddy. And as much as I was disappointed that this tame could not have been quicker had he just wanted something easier to acquire in the early game, I looked over at this teeny tiny little baby and my goodness, was he cute. And he was going to be a little friend that we were going to have to protect. Hopefully these seagulls didn't try and snatch him up, but look at how helpless he looks. And adorable. And we also know that if anything hits him, he's going to run like a scared little kid. But that's okay. We're going to protect him. So I think actually what's going to happen is we'll probably leave him here, with Finny being his guard dog, since even Finny is a better bodyguard than a Mosschops. And on that note, it was time for an expedition. Finny remained at home to play babysitter while little Mosschops grew up. And I realized that in the heat of everything, we had adopted this orphan baby. And not only were they an orphan, but they were also nameless. I didn't even take the time to give him a name. We will have to get back to that later. Now, the moment I started my expedition, I was immediately halted. There was something worse than a raptor, because a raptor I could at least kill if I saw it. But there was a Therizino blocking the path, and I did not know how to proceed. And then my genius idea thought, let me climb up top here, build myself a parachute, and I could launch all the way across right over his head, and he'll never even notice. Well, in the time it took me to actually ascend this cliff, by the time I jumped down there with the parachute, he had moved even farther back, so I basically landed at his feet. And now I was faced with yet another dilemma. Not only was there a Therizino, but there was a bunch of the seagulls circling around. And then the moment I actually did get hit, I basically just said, nope, I can't do this. And I ran as fast as I could and just prayed that the Therizino wouldn't look at me. And this rock here saved my life. I almost got chopped up by the Therizino, but he did not see me. But in the midst of all of this, I had actually ran past the Therizino. I had actually skipped the cave, not realizing that I had ran too far because I was so scared of that Therizino. Now, I really didn't have time to catch my breath and gather my bearings as I was still being attacked by these seagulls while I ran back and forth trying to dodge the Therizino. So I ran back the other way and tried to remember where the cave was, and eventually I did manage to find it and sneak inside, only to be greeted by another seagull. Now, I have no idea what all these birds took from me, but thankfully it was not my metal pick. That is the one thing that I still needed in order to harvest this crystal, and harvest this crystal I did. And at long last, I was finally able to craft my spyglass. And now began the ascent. I had to climb back out of this cave, and I was worried about what I would find on the outside, as there was a plethora of those seagulls, and the Therizino still lurked in the bushes. And now the question was all of this work worth it? Would I be able to make it home with this newfound treasure, or would I get stopped cold in my tracks, or have it taken from my inventory and ate in front of my own eyes by those pesky seagulls? I had made it about halfway back when I stumbled upon a green drop. Now, opening it up, I actually saw the exact same loot that I had saw in the white drop earlier, with the exception of the fact that there was some wool, nearly a stack of 100. So of course I was going to be taking this, as that was a huge find early on, and that would be pivotal in my ability to be able to craft fur armor earlier than expected. However, I could not take any of the structure pieces, as the wool is quite heavy, and I chose the wool because it is going to be far more useful down the road. And as soon as I closed the supply drop, I saw the Therizino right there next to me. So I booked it back to the beach as fast as I could, getting pecked in the ears and the face and the butt by a bunch of seagulls, but I was home, sweet home. Once I had arrived back at the raft, I had nearly passed out from dehydration, so I took a quick swim and got hydrated up. But the moment that I stepped out, I was attacked by another seagull, and I had it. I was furious. He had attacked me, and he attacked Finny. So I went through, stated my aim, missed the first couple of shots, because, I can't hit it the first time, ever, and I killed myself a seagull. And then I killed myself a second seagull. And I was feeling a whole lot better, because I was tired of getting poked in the butt as I was running, and I was tired of them eating up all my hard-earned work. And would you look at that? Our buddy was fully grown, but he still didn't have a name. He still did not have any importance or relevance, so he needed a name. So I called him Pete. Don't ask me why, because I don't know. Pete just what came to mind. And at this point in time, our time here at Southstone 2 had come to an end. It was time to move on, as I was in need of metal, and climbing up the mountain directly behind me did not sound very advantageous, as I did not even have a trike for protection, and the Parasaur wasn't all that strong, and the Mosschops would just run if I wasn't riding him. So I set my eyes on somewhere else. I was going to journey halfway across the map to go through and end up at Herbivore Island, as I knew there was quite a few metal resource nodes there, and I could just throw them in this forge while it cooks, while I looked for a next place to call home. So as we hopped onto the rafts here, and we were hoping and praying we did not run into any lead fixes. Things were going pretty well, and that is where we will conclude our journey for day number 4. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you're not already.